The Intellectual Gentlemen's Club.
All right, guys. Hey, and welcome back to the Intellectual Gentlemen's Club. I'm your host, Jason Abbott. This week, we're going to be talking with a lucid dreaming expert. It's something I really had been interested in the past decade or so. I've experienced it myself. You hear about it a little bit here. His name is Ryan Hurd. Ryan has degrees in consciousness studies and archaeology. I really enjoyed the conversation here. But before we get into the interview, got to cover some business. Anybody who's been subscribing to the podcast, sharing it on Facebook and Twitter, my eternal gratitude for sure. So thank you for that. If you want to support the podcast, you can head over to intellectualgentlemensclub.com. There's a support tab on there. Our affiliate sponsors are right through there. Amazon.com. You can order some of Ryan's books on there. We have an affiliate sponsor for audible.com. You can get a free book through our link. And we also have an affiliate sponsorship through onnit.com. They provide supplements, healthy foods, and fitness equipment. We talk a little bit about the product Alpha Brain during the podcast here, and I have had some experience with it. It has helped my dreams a little bit. It did seem to give me a little bit better focus. If it was a placebo effect, I don't know for sure or not, but that was my experience with it. So on our support page there, all of the links are right through little portals there. It costs you nothing extra to go through these vendors. Just gives us a little cut. Works out pretty good. There's also a PayPal button for you diehards out there who want to support us with a little cash. Helps us cover the light bills as far as hosting and any new equipment that needs replacing. I think I'm all good right now for equipment, but it does cost on a monthly basis. So anybody who can donate through there, really appreciate it. So I'm going to get right into the interview here tonight. We talk about lucid dreams. We talk about a little bit of psychedelics, meditation, and the differences between being awake and being aware, two separate concepts. Near the end, we'll talk about sleep paralysis and some of the darker aspects of the dream world. So we're off to the races here. Ryan Hurd can be found through dreamstudies.org. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end, and we'll give you guys all the links on the episode notes. So enjoy the ride. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're at the IGC. We're episode 41 with Ryan Hurd. I've given him a basic introduction for everybody, but long story short, he is a lucid dreaming expert and expert in sleep paralysis. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me.
Hey, it's great to have you. We were just discussing, when I created the IGC, this is the type of topics that I wanted to talk about. When I was planning the stages through it a couple years ago, I made a list of the topics that were on it, and this was on at least the top 10 of that list is lucid dreaming. And it's something that I've had experience with over the years. I heard about it when I was really young. I thought it was just some kind of hocus pocus type of deal. And later in life, I started hearing more and more about it. I heard about Stephen LaBerge and picked up one of his books and basically an immersion guide on how to do that. And it's been very challenging over the years, but very rewarding. I don't have very many of them. I probably have a couple a year. And if I want to work harder at it, which I'm sure we'll get into on how to immerse yourself in that, it seems to happen more often. It's like my intent really sets things up. So how did you get started in lucid dreaming? Is this something that always happened to you or something you kind of seeking out? Sorry.
Yeah, well, I did actually have some lucid dreams spontaneously when I was a teenager. And in fact, the first lucid dream I had when I was about 14 was a bit of a nightmare. And it was all about me realizing I was in a dream, and I told the monster that was seething out of the television set to go back where it came from. and it did. And I was like, oh, that was cool. That's a good power to have. But then not too long after that, I discovered how you could also explore sexuality in your dreams. And that was also very interesting and a nice way of exploring sexuality as a 14-year-old. And since then, it's just kind of, it's developed as I've developed. and I do have them spontaneously still, but I'm not like a hyper, lucid dreamer who lucid dreams every night or anything like that. I know some people like that. I'm not one of them. It's more like it happens for me maybe once or twice a month if I'm not trying to make it happen on its own accord.
All right. So so people who are tuning in maybe the first time who haven't heard about lucid dreaming, can you give a rundown on basically what that is?
You bet. So lucid dreaming is most simply defined as knowing you're dreaming while you're in the dream state, while you're asleep, and just either having a thought or just simply the bodily intuition. I'm in a dream right now, and everything I see and sense around me is the dream world, and that is it's such a thrilling kind of realization. Especially when it's happening for the first time. But that thrill never quite goes away. Every time I become lucid in a dream, it really is this kind of amazing discovery. It's like because you're waking up to yourself, and you're waking up to this so much potential and possibility. And after that, it's kind of what you want to do with the dream, how you want to interact with the dream. It has to do with you and your intentions and your interests, but it also has to do a lot with what the dream is bringing. And so the way I like to think of it is that you're in a dance with the dream. I don't try to control my dream like from start to finish. That's not really what it's about for me. It's more about just having a good dance.
It's funny you mentioned how exciting it can be in that feeling in a lucid dream, and 9 times out of 10 I wake myself up right out of it as soon as I gain lucidity, and I realize the world is my oyster right now. It's just I get so pumped up that it pops me right out of sleep. So, see, you're talking about the things that the dream will bring. Also, now we have conscious abilities, and then there's obviously the subconscious, and then the unconscious. Where do dreams stem from? Have they figured that out?
Well, I mean, essentially there is still so many mysteries when it comes to dream science and the function of dream, why we dream, while dreaming emerged in mammals. Nobody completely agrees. I mean, but to backtrack, to put it in larger perspective, scientists are now just beginning to come to agree about what sleep is for. We don't really understand sleep, and so
it's
dreaming,
amazing, isn't it?
Right.
It's like a third of our lives, and we still don't have any grasp on what it is.
We understand it in a qualitative sense.
Sure.
Like you feel better, you heal, and what happens, all the bad things that happen when you don't get sleep. But we still don't really get it, and so really until that puzzle is figured out, dreaming, it remains kind of a mysterious thing. There are evolutionary theories, and some of them are pretty good, I think. There's a lot of benefits to come with REM sleep. I think probably the best benefit, the most probable benefit, is that when you're in REM sleep, which is dreaming sleep, it's when we have those really intense long dreams that kind of tend to happen the second half of the night, and when we're waking up in the morning. When we're in dreaming sleep, the body is essentially paralyzed. The muscle tone is almost completely slack, and the function for this theoretically is just to prevent us from acting out our dreams.
Sleepwalking, perhaps.
Right. So we don't just start battling our enemies who happen to be our life partner. And we see this when dreaming goes wrong and you have certain ailments like REM behavior disorder, when that paralysis protection doesn't kick in, and then people actually do fight or run out of windows and do all kinds. They hurt themselves,
right.
And it's a very dangerous condition. So we see what happens when REM sleep breaks down, that it has a very protective nature.
So when you're falling asleep, when you're going into the dreamland, we go through this state, and you feel. Most people, you close your eyes, you feel a little restless, your mind's wandering a little bit, but eventually that kind of slows down when you enter sleep, and you go through a sort of hypnagogic, they call it, pattern, and that's when you start to fall asleep, and where things kind of start to get weird a little bit, right?
Right. Yeah, I like to think of hypnagogic patterns or hypnagogia as a brief threshold that you pass through on your way into sleep. It happens, it technically happens in stage one sleep, which is the lightest kind of the sleep stages. And in fact, if people are, if you're woken up from light sleep, you might say, I wasn't sleeping. I was just thinking. I was, just relaxing.
Just resting my eyes.
Right. Just exactly. It's like your dad in the
Yep.
chair, just resting his eyes. No, he's sleeping. It's light sleep. And so hypnagogia comes generally right there at that transfer from wakefulness into light sleep. And that's when we sometimes get those very sudden, bizarre dreams where suddenly you'll see it crystal clear. You'll see a face, or a scene, or something.
Or the falling happens a lot when you're first falling asleep like that, right? You have a falling dream and you jerk right out of it.
Right. That's called the hypnic jerk.
Okay.
Yeah, where you suddenly you're like, or you'll be in a car if you drive a lot, and you'll suddenly have the memory of having a car accident. You'll wake up in a jerk. It's like they kind of come together.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't remember hypnagogia at all, but once you kind of realize that it's there, and if you can, there's some techniques that you can use for while you're going to sleep. For instance, by putting a pillow behind your head, kind of doing a little bit of an elevated sleeping position, you'll fall asleep more slowly, and you're more likely to go through hypnagogia.
Interesting.
With awareness, and it might even stretch out a little longer before you fall completely asleep.
Okay, cool. I've been practicing meditation for a long time, and at night when I'm having problems sleeping, if I'm up, I try and just kind of try to put myself in a meditative state where I can let that hypnagogia just take a hold of me and bring me into that sleep. It's a very suggestive state also, isn't it?
It can be. To be honest, it's sort of a research black hole when it comes to hypnagogia. It really hasn't been looked at with a lot of clarity, especially in terms of brain activity and whatnot. Although, which is interesting, I think, because there's so much kind of creative potential that comes out, because often people will have naps or something, and they'll slip into hypnagogia, and they'll be thinking about the problem that they've been thinking about all day long, and they'll have a creative solution in that sort of half sleep, half wakefulness, like a eureka moment. Often
Is that why
happens.
people always said, go ahead, sleep, just sleep on it, right?
I think there's something totally to that. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
Who knows where that started, right?
It's cool. The problem solving aspect of dreaming makes me really think back to your question about what its function is. I mean, I don't know how, we don't understand how it evolved and why dreaming is there, but we've certainly used it for memory consolidation and for learning. And there's just no doubt about that. And in fact, it's I learned this as a college student, kind of randomly, but I realized that if I was cramming for a biology test all night long, if I went to sleep for even just an hour and a half before the exam, I would retain more information than if I just tried to drink more coffee and stay up all night long.
It was a dangerous game you were playing.
I know, right? It is dangerous, but it was so cool because I would quiz myself. I would read through all this text. I would take a nap. I would wake up and I would say, "Oh my gosh, I retained this.
Right.
It worked."
It's great that you could learn from yourself instead of having to read that out of a book somewhere.
Yeah, I don't really know how I picked that up. I mean, I've always been a light sleeper. And so I can fall asleep pretty easily and in all kinds of situations. And so I think I just tried to do the learning by osmosis. I fell asleep on my book and it was oh.
So I wanted to ask you, when lucid dreams kind of pop up, most of them or all of them for me have been early in the mornings when I've forced myself to go back to sleep after kind of doing something that I liked for a while. Typical things that you would learn out of induction techniques, I guess. And I don't remember having any powerful lucid dreams at night when I first went to sleep. So but I've also heard about people in that hypnagogic state just kind of leading themselves right into a lucid dream. Is that something you've been able to do as an expert over the years?
Yeah, I can do it, but it's all about timing. And it kind of comes down to the way that sleep is structured over the night, because
it's different brain waves, right?
Right, exactly. We cycle sort of through the light and deep sleep in different ways, but I would say give up on the first half of the night with lucid dreaming,
Right.
because really what's going on in the first half of the night is restorative sleep, where you're really doing a lot of deep sleep mixing in with light sleep, and so lots of delta wave activity, and that's the core aspect of restorative sleep. Where human growth hormones only released when you're in delta wave activity. So, muscle building, healing, all that stuff that is just kind of essential to, to living happens then. And then basically REM starts popping up at first just 5 minutes at a time. And then the next time it comes back around, it might be 10 or 15 minutes. And that kind of happens. And so towards the second half of the night, that's where you start to get these longer REM sessions. And REM is really what you want to focus on when you're talking about lucid dreaming and becoming more conscious in your dreams, because REM sleep is closest to waking consciousness out of all the sleep stages. The brain, in terms of brain activity, brainwave activity, and just frontal lobe activity as well. And then there's this other thing that happens that's kind of interesting, which is that in the morning, the melatonin effect is wearing off after dawn, and essentially the brain is beginning to wake up again. And so there's an effect where REM dreams in the early morning have more of those metacognition, those self-awareness type activities that lead to lucidity, where you're aware of yourself, aware of your feelings, and you're noticing judgments and stuff like that. You see a lot of that kind of stuff happening in the early morning as the brain's warming back up. So lucid dreaming in the morning is basically where it's at.
Okay, so over the night we're going through different brainwave patterns, and where is that sweet spot with lucid dreaming? Is that in the theta waves?
Well, it's it's really not. I would kind of not think of it about the brainwave and what brainwave do you want to get for lucid dreaming. I would focus simply on the second half of the night. But if you wanted to do like a wake back to bed technique, like you were talking about, where you go to sleep and go into hypnagogia, what I would suggest is to set an alarm for about after 4 hours of sleep. Wake up with your alarm. You say you meditate. This is great. So you could do a recommended time for meditation might be 30 minutes of seated meditation, or if you can do it, up to 45 or 60 minutes would be ideal. And then right after that meditation, go back to bed with the strong intention to remain lucid as you fall asleep. You'll have a very high likelihood of slipping right into a REM state at that point.
See, that's the problem. I can't commit to something like that. I've tried a number of times, and it gives me great results. And as soon as I back off a little bit with those type of techniques, it kind of evaporates. And it's really about me putting my priorities ahead of other things in life. I know I'm going to need more sleep, especially in the morning, if I want to make those happen. There's certain things that I have to do, obviously. Yeah.
Right. It's totally like that. And of course, if you have a partner, it's kind of difficult to be like, listen, I'm going to turn the light on and set the alarm up. Right. At 4 a.m. Right. So it can wreak a little havoc on your life. But I tend, because I have a kid and I tend to not sleep in anymore. But when I sleep in a little bit, if I'm lucky on a Saturday, that's when I'm going to have a lucid dream, because I'm going to have that extended REM session that happens, late in the morning. So that's really where it's at for me. So you just kind of have to figure out what works best for your life.
Gotcha. I've messed around with different techniques, how to fall in and out of lucid dreaming and meditation techniques and things like that. Onnit.com is the affiliate sponsor of ours for the podcast, and I've used their nootropic alpha brain before in the past, and I noticed that it did help me a little bit with my dreaming, but it wasn't as intense as a lot of people claim to be. Do you use any supplements, or do you recommend anything, or where do you stand on supplementation?
Sure. No, I have experimented with supplements over the years, and I've had some good results with them. In fact, I just got some dream herb in the mail today.
I saw that on your website. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, Callia Zacatici, I think is how you say it, and it comes out of Mexico, and and I'm looking forward to experimenting with that as a tea, making it as a tea. I've had it before. It's extraordinarily bitter. It's nasty. It's
Throw
nasty
some honey in it.
but it's medicinal, and maybe that's the placebo effect I need to kick it.
Yep. It tastes like medicine. It must be. Right?
But hands down, I think it's the substances like galantamine and huperzine A that are the most effective lucid dreaming supplements kind of going around right now. And but they're heavy duty stuff, and I can't recommend them for everybody. I have a spot on my website on dreamstudies.org where I review galantamine, and I talk about, when and how not to take it. I mean, especially for instance, if someone is taking medication for depression or anything that, like SSRIs or anything that messes with your neurotransmitters, you don't want to take galantamine or huperzine A because they might counterintegrate, it'll conflict with the medicine.
Because they also work on a neurotransmitter that's acetylcholine, right?
Yeah, it does the opposite. It's the opposite effect.
So it's like a sister of serotonin and dopamine and all that.
Right. And so what galantamine does is it actually prevents the breakdown of acetylcholine and therefore indirectly increases the acetylcholine levels in the brain. And that, when combined with REM dreaming and a strong intention, it increases memory it increases bizarreness in dreams, vividness in dreams, and in a lot of people, they'll go lucid in the dream as well, and realize that they're dreaming in the dream.
Okay.
And I always recommend, that supplementation is a great way to do it, but just to do it also with some of the more traditional methods as well, because setting a strong intention, having a good, bedroom sanctuary, like making sure you have enough time to sleep and can, have time for this, and, dream journaling, all the kind of classic stuff that you kind of need to do.
Dream journaling is really cool. I've been doing that for a long time too. And I actually can look back at some of the dreams that I had maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And as soon as I open the page and I start to read that dream, it like all floods back to me.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because most dreams, you wake up in the morning, and for me at least, if I don't write them down within the first 5 minutes or even really the first 60 seconds upon wake, they're gone. I might remember a bit of it later in the day, but if I start writing it immediately when I wake up, it's like I can write a whole story. It keeps flooding in. It's amazing. Right. Almost to the point where it was taking up almost an hour of my mornings at some points when I was really working on trying to initiate those lucid dreams. And it's just amazing. I look back on them. I can remember them so vividly like that.
That's cool. Yeah. It definitely, dream journaling can take over your life if you don't watch out. I know there's been times where I said I can spend my entire day writing down dreams, and then I'm no longer living.
Yeah.
Which is sort of strange. So
yeah, you're living in the sleep realm. Strange. So you were talking about bizarre, and I wanted to bring up a couple things. We talk about psychedelics a lot on the podcast, and DMT has been brought up in a number of episodes. I see a correlation between meditation, different states you can get in float tanks, even different psychedelics that I've been on. I think they're all kind of wound up in there, especially with dreams. It seems like there's a lot of evidence that when people talk about the pineal gland, maybe is it possible that we emit a little bit of DMT every night when we go to sleep, the same chemical that you hear about these near-death experiences. We've had people on talking about that as well. And DMT seems to be like this magical substance that everybody is looking for it to be the holy grail. How do you feel about DMT?
That's interesting. Well, I've seen Rick Strassman's theories about DMT, and I think that's intriguing, but I don't know if that's exactly what's going on with dreaming, or that's what's making dreaming so special.
Okay.
Although it could be the case. But I think on a metaphoric level, that there is a lot to be said for thinking of dreaming as an altered state of consciousness, especially if you approach it with a strong intention. a healing intention or, an exploratory, a curiosity, right?
Something that we talk about with psychedelics is set and setting. You're talking about the same type of thing.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it's very important with a lot of things.
Setting. And that's very true, and that's very true with lucid dreaming as well. About taking lucid dreaming seriously, preparing your bedroom, and then most strongly knowing what you want and to remember what you're going to ask or do in the dream is very important if you're in an exploratory mindset with the dream. But not only that, there actually are correlations between, for instance, ayahuasca and lucid dreaming in terms of the synchrony of the brain that's occurring.
So explain that a little bit.
Well, I mean, it kind of, I was telling you later, don't think so much about brainwaves because I think people get kind of hung up on the brainwaves.
Uh-huh.
But there is some research that suggests that the synchrony of the lobes of the brain that happens with ayahuasca, there's a 40 hertz resonance that the gamma resonance that is happening also with lucid dreaming, and there are some similarities between the two states in terms of bizarreness, mythological creatures, the healing potentials that come out of both of the states, spontaneous contact with intelligent alien others. I mean, that's not happening on every lucid dream by any stretch, but the big lucid dreams, kind of when you become lucid in a dream, some people call it a super lucid dream, but it becomes one of these almost like a religious experience.
Yeah, the mystical state, right?
Like a mystical state. So lucid dreaming in itself is very dualistic, and it can be very much like waking life, and it's described like that. I mean, you read Stephen LaBerge, he talks about how he does scientific experiments inside his lucid dreams. But it also could be a gateway to expanded consciousness. And so that's the interesting thing about lucid dreaming is it is itself, besides a state of consciousness, it's a gateway to other states of consciousness, which can happen in the sleep state. Have you tried ayahuasca? I have not. No, I haven't had that opportunity.
Yeah, it's a harrowing journey, I'll tell you firsthand. I've experienced it one time, and when I did experience it, it really, I didn't see a lot of, visuals like you would expect, like a psychedelic kaleidoscope patterns or anything like that. But it was more of an internal dream that kept playing over and over again. Like I went through different, very challenging points in my life and different insights that I had maybe even missed out at the time and came through it almost like in a dream state. And it was so real that, like one of those dreams where you wake up and like, that was realer than real.
Yeah.
I just can only I can only say from the one time, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I've heard too that one of the effects of ayahuasca is that a lot of people have lucid dreams the week after the experience.
Afterglow, okay.
And so, which kind of speaks to how there might be something going on in terms of the brain activity, kind of creating a ripple effect for lucidity there. Yeah, interesting stuff. And, actually Charles Tart, the parapsychologist, consciousness researcher, he was talking about how in dreams, he was talking about this in the 1960s, how dreams can mimic altered states of consciousness like marijuana intoxication and LSD.
Really?
And you can actually use your dream to inhabit those states of consciousness. He called them high dreams.
Go figure.
And it's funny because it's a concept that hasn't really caught on. I mean, not a lot of people talk about it anymore, but it's right there in his 1969 book, Altered States of Consciousness, and it's just this territory has been covered by consciousness researchers for a long time.
A lot of people consider dreaming to be like almost a shamanic state. I don't think you necessarily have a shaman guiding you. Whether you can be your own shaman, I'm not sure, or if you have outside help, depending on your belief systems.
Yeah, I think there's potential for that, especially, depending on how you define shamanism. But
it's a tricky word, isn't it?
It is a tricky word, but I'm comfortable with using it in this sense of shamanism being a belief system, animism that comes along with certain practices that elicit these transpersonal experiences. And when and shamanism, I mean, it's not a perfect word. I mean, it has a cultural, roots. Some people say it's appropriation. I mean, most anthropologists these days use the word, and so I'm comfortable with using it. Now, if you think about it, like what shamanism is it's a healing practice. I mean, we're talking about practitioners who go into altered states for clients or for themselves to bring back information and for healing.
Right.
Right. And those things are totally done in the dream state. You can, as a practitioner, you can go into a dream with an intention for healing or for information for yourself or for others. And so dreaming is a shamanic state of consciousness. And there are peoples, in the world today that use lucid dreaming as shamanism. In fact, even not just the positive side, but the dark side of shamanism, which would be sorcery, on which people actually use lucid dreams to curse each other, to go, almost like, Inception, where they hunt each other out and try to, basically curse them and cause sickness. And there's quite a few ethnographic cases of people reporting to have this ability as well. So it's a long storied tradition that's not all positivity and bliss, but I think that the bigger perspective is that dreaming is strong medicine, and that strong medicine can heal or it can hurt.
You talk in the book about being awake and being aware of two separate concepts. Is that when things are colliding here? That's when you get lucid dreaming.
Right. Yeah. Awake generally meaning, are you taking in information from your senses of your exterior environment or not? And awareness being just the ability to have self-reference, to know where you are in relationship to whether your environment is, external or not. And the point is that awareness can be anywhere.
Right. I wanted to come back to the 40 hertz brainwave you were talking about. Have you ever messed around with any binaural beats or anything like that? We talked about that briefly in our meditation episode.
Yeah, I have, and I've had some positive results with it.
Okay.
But I haven't, placebo tested myself or anything. Sure. Some people find binaural beats to be really irritating. I didn't mind it. I thought it was kind of interesting. It kind of created hum in my head,
mm-hmm.
and I found it calming, and I think that's really kind of the best evidence that we have for binaural beats, is it can really do brain entrainment for kind of creating a relaxation response, and yet where you don't sort of just fall asleep into unconsciousness, but you're relaxed, but you still have some vigilance. And that's really a nice way to go into the sleep state with that relaxation, but with vigilance still there. That's so yeah, I really enjoy binaural beats. I'm not using them actively now.
The spectrum is very long. Obviously, you have kilohertz and megahertz and gigahertz and all that when you're talking about high frequencies. But what type of binaural beats have you used in the past? Are we talking like the 40 hertz level, or
no,
is it something that goes up and down? How does that work exactly?
I used and I have this on my website too. I have an explanation of binaural beats. I used I believe it was an alpha theta mix, and it's something that you use right before sleep, and it really did seem to be very relaxing. And it is interesting to think about, especially in terms of the gamma hypothesis as being related to lucidity and metacognition. I'd be interesting to see if binaural beats could do this, if oral entrainment could help you induce that. Because in the lab, there's just these studies that have come out that 40 hertz actually used as transcranial electrical stimulation, like actually putting a direct or an alternating current on the scalp at the 40 hertz level, actually is inducing lucid dreams in subjects.
Really?
And this just came out in, I believe it was 2014, two different research groups, one out of Switzerland, one out of Germany. Two different groups. They used slightly different methods, but it kind of closed the loop, because before we're like, well, there's 40 hertz activity in lucid dreams. But they didn't quite get well, if we induce it in the brain, will it increase lucidity? And it did. Now, but the subject size was really small. It was just like, I think in between the two studies, we're talking about less than 20 people. And one of the studies only used frequent lucid dreamers, so people who were really already easily to tune in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you could say have better control over their brain. But the other study actually used people who were not studied in frequent lucid dreamers, and it still increased metacognition and lucidity. And so that was very interesting. What that means for binaural beats, I don't know. Maybe it's true. I haven't really seen the market catch up with that yet.
So do you ever use different technologies like the dream masks, things like that?
I have in the past, and I'm really looking forward to what's coming out around the bend, because there's a few companies that have been beta-ing their masks for a couple of years.
I've seen some stuff on Kickstarter and stuff too that looks pretty exciting.
Right, and yeah, and like for instance, the Aurora mask by iWinks.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that they're going to be launching that sometime in the next 6 months. I mean, it's going to be 2015 for sure. And they've got a very sophisticated mask that actually detects your brainwave activity, parses that into sleep stage activity, and therefore can like shoot flashing lights and sounds, at you right at the right moment, right?
That's incredible.
Light sleep and REM, and they're having, they're saying they're having good results. And Stephen LaBerge is also in the final stages of working on his Nova Dreamer 2, and he has been tinkering around with this mask for quite a few years. He's got a lot of data behind it, and he's a perfectionist, and so he hasn't quite released it yet. And in fact, I thought it was going to come out last year, and then it didn't. And so, but we're very hopeful that they're going to be releasing that, and that's with the Lucidity Institute at lucidity.com. And so between those two, I think there's some really good things around the corner.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how technology can augment our lives in positive ways. It seems like we're due for that, because largely I think that it affects our dreams and negatively, just being that we're so active all the time on technology. I think there's a lot to be said for people watching TV and the type of light that's emitted from your smartphone or computer screen before you go to bed. Maybe it is messing with, the proper waves that you need to kind of wind down and then, gradually go to sleep, instead of, well, let's turn off the box because my eyes are sleepy, and then boom, you're going. Do you think that has any effect on your health?
Yeah, it does.
It's got to.
I mean, from the stuff I've been reading, there's no doubt about it that, we're already a sleep-deprived, world. The Western world is
production,
right? and then you add smartphones and tablets to the mix, and we're basically screwed because all that blue light. If you've got an iPad, you've got to keep it like a foot and a half from your face, even at the low light setting at bed, because otherwise it's going to stall melatonin production. And these studies are coming out, study after study, that are really showing that it's, what they feared most is actually true. So in a way, it's kind of cool that there's the poison and the cure of technology, because there's a lot of interesting dream apps that are coming out. I consult for Shadow, which is an app that's going to be creating, a database for dreams where you can record your dream into the app and then share it with, thousands of people. And I think it's cool because it's like, well, if we're already kind of sleeping next to our iPhones, let's use them in a good way for sleep.
Right. You're sleeping next to it. So everybody is. You talk about how we're living in a technological pace right now, but people have been dreaming since the dawn of time. I mean, there's cave art that's, supposed to depict dreams and things like that. Culture over the year has, changed, and now we're living kind of in more of a rational culture, and we're not using kind of an imagination. Usually when we're adults, our imagination's been crushed and destroyed by, powers that be that want us to go to work and be a good civil servant. And there's definitely value in that. But I think that we're missing a lot of, the mysteries in life. And we have a culture of separation now, even with the connectivity that we do with social media and all that. It seems like we're in an age of loneliness.
Yeah.
I read an article about that the other day. It just was, I don't know, struck home, I guess.
Yeah, it's sad, and it's true. It is true that this is an age of loneliness and separation, especially when it comes to dreams from our own psyches, because we pay people to dream for us. I mean, that's what Hollywood is, right?
Mm-hmm.
We watch other people's dreams, and it does perform a function. There's a culture behind it. We can all talk about it at the water cooler or whatever people gather around in offices. I haven't really worked in an office in over 10 years. So.
Good for you.
But the point is that you can make a dreaming culture with your own family in your own household at the household level. And that's what I'm trying to do is to wake people up to the grassroots style. Well, let's make a dreaming culture one household at a time, one community at a time. And it all starts with sharing your dreams with your loved ones and just making it kind of a part of the daily conversation. Not necessarily about trying to psychoanalyze every time someone shares a dream, but just sharing it. And because we don't dream for ourselves, we dream for other people too. And we dream about future possibilities. And so it's always interesting. It's always refreshing. If it's the right time and you're sharing with somebody who's in the right space for it. The last thing you want to do is, share a dream with someone who's like, oh, I don't have time for your boring dream.
Yeah.
That
or, that some dreams can be very personal. Even from a spouse. It depends on what's going on in your life.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
I've had really great dreams actually the last couple nights that and some of the ideas I've been cooking up have duplicated themselves in the dream world and kind of got a tactile sensation of what I've been thinking about.
Nice.
But there's times that I have dreamed shit that I hope nobody goes through my dreams journals on, because there is some wacky, bizarre stuff that goes on. And I'm okay with the fact that I dream about crazy shit, and it doesn't have to specifically mean that I'm a crazy person. Everybody has got to have crazy dreams. If you say you don't, then you're a fucking liar, in my opinion.
It's true. I mean, the neuroscientist Alan Hobson, he says that dreaming is delirium. In the sense that we all, essentially go crazy. We're psychotic in the middle of the night. As with dream, we just have the privilege of coming back to our right minds during the day. And man, I mean, throughout history, you see Christian theologians and wrestling with what to do with their, sexy, inappropriate dreams that they have. Mm-hmm. And what you see before they stop talking about dreams altogether is several prominent theologians saying, hey, I can forgive myself my dreams, and the point is that you're not responsible for your dream, but what you're responsible for is how much you focus in on what comes out of the dream. If it's negative and hurting somebody or going against your own self-imposed morality. And it's kind of, fits in with lucid dreaming too. Because sometimes things don't really go the way you want them to go in a lucid dream. And you're like, oh, this really weird thing happened. I didn't intend it to. It's like, you can't feel guilty about your dream because it was still a dream.
Well, it kind of goes along with thoughts. And the reason why I have such a problem with a lot of organized religion is because they want to control thoughts. And we're not even privy to our own thoughts. It's like if you're having, let's take a priest, for example, right? If he's having a thought about having sex with a member of his church, right, then that would be considered a sinful thought, perhaps, right?
Absolutely.
So he's going to have to pray that out with the Lord, and And I find it very damaging that these organized religions have that power to be able to, say you cannot think this, and going into the dream world, I can't imagine that if you're in a religion like that, and it's as and obviously I'm stereotyping here. There's different levels of religion and following and all that, but that must carry on past your thought pattern. If you wake up in a dream and you have some crazy thought that you would never think about in the waking world, perhaps, and you're like, what? Where did that come from? That's a major sin. Like, who do I tell about that? And then you don't even want to tell anybody, even the pastor.
Right, right.
It's just kind of, I don't know. It's just kind of like a cycle of filth, I guess, that it never really gets clean.
Well, and it's it's ahistorical. I mean, going back, from a Christian perspective, Saint Augustine. This is the guy who pretty much invented the modern version of what we refer to as original sin. He, I think, had a really nasty dream life. I think it was nasty. And you look at his writings, because he's always trying to kind of rationalize his dreams and why it's happening. And at the end, he's just like, screw it. It happened, and I'm not responsible for it. And it's actually not a sin unless I try to keep indulging in it in my waking life, like, bringing it back forth. Mm-hmm. So this is an idea that has been, talked about for centuries. And it's up to the individual, I think, these days. There's lots of spiritual authorities who just don't know about dreams and don't really understand them. And it's become almost fundamentalist, even at the institutional level of religions that aren't fundamentalist, to thinking of dreams as being negative or sinful. And that's kind of too bad, because we've lost many great traditions of dream interpretation and I'm talking about Christianity and Islam and Sufism. All three of these traditions have centuries of just wonderful tactics and techniques and ways of glorifying dreams.
So why don't we see that anymore with religion? I know that the Buddhists have, dream yoga. I've heard about that time and time again. The Sufis, for Islam, but I haven't seen anything really centered on Christianity. I largely kind of stay away from it. It's really given me a sour taste in my mouth over the years. But how come we don't hear anything about that? Is it just because they don't want to deal with these facts of the different issues that arise with dreams?
Well, I don't know. I honestly.
Yeah, why don't you have these answers, Ryan?
Right. I have my suspicions that there's just, when you look at the different levels of religion and from institutional and what's talked about from a level of doctrine, and then what's actually experienced and talked about and worked with on the level of parishes and priests and ministers, that there is a disconnect, because there's many, many ministers that I've known over the years who work with dreams and help their parishioners develop a very rich vocabulary for working with dreams as spiritual insight. But you don't hear it talked about in the infrastructure of the churches themselves. And I think it's not just, it's almost like it has less to do with religion than it has to do with just the sign of the times in general, because dreaming is just not popular. It's not rational. And even the churches value rational thought.
Oh, sure.
More than anything.
They don't want you thinking too much.
And so it's empiricism and the age of reason and kind of dreams and intuition, all that stuff is just it's out. It's been out for a long time, and that's why the science of consciousness is really having trouble, because there's a lot of people who are like, we don't even know what it is. What are we studying? It's like, well, we've as a science, we developed historically to bracket out consciousness because those guys in the robes will kill us if we talk about it. So it's not even what, our whole worldview actually extracted consciousness, a couple hundred years ago. So trying to inject consciousness back into science has been really problematic.
Yeah. And dreams are a tricky subject because there's actually neuroscience behind everything. But then you have a lot of people bringing in spirituality, which could mean a variety of different things. So it's kind of one of those realms where you have to kind of tread lightly on both, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, you do. And I mean, I try to keep a holistic perspective, and because we all have, even if you're an atheist, I mean, that's a belief system.
Sure, I agree, 100%.
If you're agnostic, if you're an existentialist, if you're a scientific materialist, if you're bringing concepts into the realm of faith as an explanation of why things work, hey, that's a faith, that's a belief system. We all have them, and the tricky thing is we have more than one. We have lots of influences, and we're influenced by our parents' religions, how we were raised, and then, of course, like as adults, what we think we think. And one of the things actually that I've noticed with dreams and exploring, especially lucid dreams, is that some of these paradigm conflicts that we've never really thought about they flare up because you hit a wall, or say a point of fear, or you're facing something in a dream, and because you're in an emotional, psychological state that's delusional. I mean, you're in the dream world. Long-term memory, you kind of stretch back to core childhood beliefs. They're closer than your waking, rational adult, perspective.
They got them claws deep, right?
Yeah, and so you have to deal with the conflict, and then you have to kind of look on, I would say, doing active work about, like, okay, well, what, is good about my core religious beliefs? Because the truth is, like, I mean, I'm speaking for myself here. My mom was a lapsed Catholic, and my dad, well, he was raised, I think, Methodist, but he believes in aliens more than God. So I had a very weird sort of upbringing, but it was definitely dualistic in the sense of sort of my mother's upbringing. And, when the shit hits the fan, man, and I'm scared, I think about good and evil. And I'm trying to be, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and that's just in me. And I can't cleanse that out. That's just apparently the way I'm structured. And I mean, not to say I can't have a non-dual experience or work on this, but it's just about kind of realizing where you come from, what your limitations are, and how your beliefs can shift and change over time.
So let's continue about talking this religious structure here a little bit, about the concerns that they had. Now, back in the day, people would have visitations from the incubus and the succubus, and we now find them out to be victims of sleep paralysis or night terrors. You wrote a book about that. Can you talk to us a little bit about sleep paralysis and the bizarre world that is, I guess?
Oh yeah, any opportunity to talk about sleep paralysis.
Yeah, that's not something that I've experienced personally. I know that my father did, and when he told me about his experience, it rings true to a lot of other experiences, and it freaked me out at the time, because he wasn't the kind of guy that was just hey, this happened. It was like a real thing. Actually, I take that back. There was one time that I was in a hotel room with my mother and my sister. We had a weekend away. We were at a casino, and I was in the middle of the night, and I jumped up out of nowhere and was sure that there was a figure at the other side of the room. And I was searching the room, like, up and down. I thought somebody had, like, gotten a key and got in the room and everything. That was the only really weird time where I woke up and thought there was something in the room with me, and it was like a really dark type of sensation.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like a classic case, right? So
I guess I have.
And you're not, I mean, I think that some of the demographics I've seen is something like 1 out of 5 people have had it at least once in their life.
Wow, that's a big percentage.
Right. So, I mean,
and you don't even hear about it.
Well, I mean, that's it. We're not allowed to talk about it. It's one of these taboos. I mean,
welcome to the Intellectual Gentlemen's Club, everyone.
Let me define it for your listeners, because it's such a terrible term, sleep paralysis. It's a very medical term, and it's not even kind of a good, correct term. And remember, we were talking earlier about how in REM sleep, there's a muscle paralysis that keeps us from acting out our dreams. Mm-hmm. Well, what sleep paralysis is it is that REM paralysis. But what happens is that your conscious mind wakes up, and that body paralysis continues. And so it's temporary. For most people, it's something that happens, for less than 30 seconds, while they're going to sleep or while they're waking up. And it's sort of like you realize you're waking up from a dream, you're laying there in bed, and then you try to move and you realize you can't move. And often it's not experienced as paralysis, but rather as pressure. Pressure on the chest, pressure on the neck, especially. And so that's how the term kind of came about. But it's the other symptoms of it that really make this such a fascinating phenomena. And that's how there's often, as you're talking about, this sensed presence in the room, an alien other. And so the weird thing is you're vividly aware in a hyper-real state. You know that you're not dreaming. You're thinking rationally, yet you can't move. It feels like something is holding you down. And then you have that palpable sense that something else creepy is in the room with you. And so that's the incubus effect.
Why is it always a creepy figure? Why isn't it, like an angel or something like that that's by your bedside, like very comforting? It's always a negative type of entity, isn't it?
Actually, I think that there is the positive dimension to it that involves angel visitations. I think that some angel visitations could happen in this state. And so what happens? The other piece of it is when you actually see things. And that's, and it probably is, you're either projecting your dream, into the waking environment with your
overlapped
eyes.
Or something.
Your eyes are open often, not always, but they've proven it in labs, and plenty of people have videotaped themselves. And your eyes are open. You're dreaming with your eyes open. You can't move. And if you're in a fearful state, negative things come up, and so that's when you get these, the incubus itself, which could be a creature or a monster that sits on your chest, the old hag, and people actually report sexual molestation and ghost rape occurring, where they actually feel like they're sexually penetrated.
Damn.
During this experience, meanwhile they're getting drooled on. There's something squeezing their neck. It's awful, and I should say that it also happens for people who have had trauma, sexual, abuse as children, social anxiety, PTSD. So there is a psychological component to it, where some people have it that it's extraordinarily intense, and then there's other people who have never had this kind of trauma before, and they still have these experiences. And so, whoa, this happens, right? We live in the 21st century, and demons appear to exist. And what do you do about that?
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you are religious and that pops up in your dream that night, that can only intensify how frightening it is. I mean, even myself, if I saw like a demon creature on me in a dream and it was real, it felt as real as that is, and I couldn't move, I might go back to my roots of Catholicism and be like, this is a demon, I'm dying, I'm going to hell, right? And you're talking, we were talking about that earlier, those old beliefs, that you were raised with, and from childhood and all that. But the brain's such a crazy thing. Like, humans are just insane. We're talking over the internet here, which is just the fabrication of electricity. We're talking about the neurochemistry behind brains and why we think about the shit we do when we're not even awake. I mean, it's so preposterous. Life in general is so preposterous to me that anything could be possible. Dealing with something like this, I don't know. I don't know why more people aren't excited about it, why they're not interested in it even. I'm sure it probably freaks some people out, but it's like I said in the beginning, we spend like almost a third of our lives asleep. You would think that people would put more interest behind it, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, there's so many mysteries coming out of sleep, and sleep paralysis being kind of the creepy one that no one wants to talk about. But I really do think, I mean, I've actually been collecting positive and I guess, mixed sexual experiences happening out of sleep paralysis. And I've got dozens of cases of people who report where they have the sensed presence and they get turned on, and then they actually have an orgasmic experience with, I guess, a ghost type.
Like a wet dream?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And these, because I know you hear about teenagers when you're going through puberty and stuff having wet dreams. But it's kind of more rare to hear about an adult going through something like that. Are you talking about adults or?
I'm talking about adults, and not only that, but I'm talking about women.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about women. I've plenty of stories have come to me where, and they say, I don't understand what's going on, but I go to sleep, something gets me, and I go with it, and I have the best sex of my life, and I don't know what that was. It's fascinating, and like, how many taboos deep are we now? Let's see.
Right.
Sex with a demon, check.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
And this shit happens, and it's been happening for as long as we've been human, I would say. And unfortunately, I mean, in the Middle Ages, I mean, women were burned at the stake for this kind of phenomena
because they were considered witches, right?
Because they were a sufferer of sleep paralysis and admitted to having an incubus encounter, or because men had incubus encounters featuring the women as dream figures.
Shit.
And that actually was what the Salem witch trials were all about. You can actually look, you look at the testimony, and Cotton Mather, who was the prosecuting attorney, he declared that spectral evidence was allowed to be used in the court of law, and so he had witnesses coming up and saying, "I saw that woman. She came into my bedroom and humped on me," or however you said that in a puritanical way, and I woke up and I had an erection, and so I knew it was her, and they hanged her.
And I've also heard that the Salem witch trials may have been attributed to ergot, which is like a psychedelic fungus that grows on rye bread. So, what do you think about that? Maybe somewhere somewhere between.
It could. I mean, I'm not saying sleep paralysis accounts for all of that, but
of course,
it came up during the proceedings.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard the ergot hypothesis too. St. Anthony's fire, and it could be that that's what some of that was about, but it definitely played a role in terms of the actual prosecution, just as it played a role in the Middle Ages. And so, I mean, I guess one thing we can say is, hey, isn't it nice to live in a time where you're not going to get burned at the stake for having sex with a demon?
Yeah.
At least not in America.
Right. Yeah, that shit still goes on across the globe, right?
Yeah, I mean, people definitely still prosecute witches, especially like places like Sri Lanka and other places in the Middle East. It happens.
It's frightening.
Yeah,
crazy stuff.
It is a strange world, Jason.
Yes, there's no doubt about that. So, Ryan, what do you got coming up? I know you just released another book. The book I've been reading is Dream Like a Boss, book 2. Your first book seems more like just like a basic overview of a lot of dreaming practices. But book 2, I've really been enjoying it because of the lucid dreaming content. Yeah,
and you can you don't need to read book 1 to get into the second book,
mm-hmm.
which big dreams, because it's just about big dreams and psychic dreams and sleep paralysis and lucid dreaming and
really
ancestral. It's really I let my freak flag fly. I had fun. The first dream is much more book is much more kind of sober in terms of it's just talking about dream work and methods of recalling more dreams. It's got a more how-to focus to it, I think.
Yeah, you amped up book 2 for sure.
So what's next is this is kind of cool. I've developed a coin, and I call it the Lucid Talisman, and I'm going to be selling these on my website at dreamstudies.com very soon, probably launching in February. And what it is it's a reality check that you keep in your pocket. And essentially, it's a coin that you keep in your pocket, and then whenever you put your hands in your pocket, which we always do at really weird unconscious random times I've discovered
Yeah.
since carrying the Lucid Talisman. And at that point, when you come in contact with the coin, you do a reality check and you notice your surroundings and you check on what's going on with you internally, create a pattern, a habitual pattern of metacognition. And what this does is people who study lucid dreaming know is that when you do reality checks, you create a cognitive habit of noticing yourself. You'll start doing the same thing in your dream life too.
Not only that, but what I noticed when I was doing a lot of reality checks, it almost grounded me in normal life too. Like, wow, I'm really here. This isn't a dream. This is kind of cool. You know, it's like you take a moment to stop your normal routine and stop that busy mind. It's like just a mini meditation almost.
Yeah,
and it seems like it grounds me more.
Exactly. And I mean, you could tie meditation to it. You could actually do a quick, couple of deep breaths and stage a relaxation response to it. There's a lot of things you can do with it. So that's what's coming up next. Is I've designed. It's this really cool coin that's got just like some really trippy designs on it, and I had a lot of fun designing it. And I'll be selling those on my website, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how people interact with it and how it works for them.
It sounds very Inception-ish. What do you?
Yeah,
what did you think about the movie?
Yeah,
it's one of my faves. Like if it's on, it's got to stay on. I can't change the channel type of movie.
Agreed. I like the movie. I reviewed it on my site, and it got a lot right. I think. I mean, Christopher Nolan did his homework. He talked to Stephen LeBurge. He read some books. He had several of the actors were really cued into it, And yeah, when I saw, the totem, right?
Yep.
The idea of you have a personal totem, and that's how you ground yourself. And the problem is that they got that kind of wrong because, all right, so if you haven't seen Inception at this point,
it's too late for spoilers, everybody. It's been out for years. Go watch the movie.
So Leonardo DiCaprio, his character's name is Cobb. He spins this little top to see if he's dreaming or not. Mm-hmm. And he knows that if it topples over, that he's awake, and that if it keeps spinning, he's in a dream.
Because it's irrational, right?
Right. But that would create a false positive, because you could have a dream where the top flops over.
Sure.
And then you'd be like, oh, okay, I'm awake. And then you wouldn't, right? So you miss an opportunity.
Yep.
So I was thinking about that. And when I was designing the Lucid Talisman, I was like, it's got to have nice, clear text on it, because text is one of the most unstable elements of the dream. And when you're in a lucid dream, you're looking around, you look at the wall, you see a sign, and you read it. If you look away even for a second and then come back, it's changed.
That messes with me every time, because that doesn't work for me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And I really tried to lock in on that one the last time I was really going for it. And it was a clock in my dream, like a digital clock. I looked at the clock, it was like 6:42. I looked away, looked back at it, 6:42.
Oh, man. Okay.
And I remember that when I woke up.
You just blew my whole theory, so.
No, continue, because let's hear it.
No, it's great. I'm really glad. You're very, that's very interesting, because that's not true for a lot of people.
I know. That's what surprised me. I'm like, this is supposed to work. What's going on? Why am I such a freak?
What might be better for you is to look at something that's longer, that has a longer strain of words,
like
or
a billboard or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's all. I mean, 6:42. That's only 3. All right. I mean, that's in working memory. The thing is in dreams is that working memory is just really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Short-term memory sucks in your dreams. You just forget. You forget. You
even forget what about you were dreaming about, right? I mean, just go into something else, different dream entirely.
You're just flowing with it.
Yeah.
And so right. So if you're looking at text, you really want to look at a phrase or something that's longer, or even something that doesn't, like a poem or something, and flip through it and flip a page and then flip back and that kind of thing. And then you'll start to notice the incongruities. So that would be my recommendation.
All right. So let's hear the talisman.
The talisman's got on one side it says, "Are you dreaming?" and on the other side it says, "Are you awake?" And then it's also got a couple of Latin phrases on the top that essentially say the same thing in Latin, but most people don't speak Latin,
Right.
and Latin's a little strange. And so it's kind of perfect for the scenario of looking at text and images, and you can take the coin and flip it over in waking life and sort of make sure that everything is the same and interact with it. It's a fun idea, and the kind of the icing on the cake is that there's because we use 3D printing on the coin itself, you can spin the coin on a table and it spins really nicely.
Oh, okay.
And so there you go. There's Cobb again with his his totem.
It sounds cool. I after I saw the movie, I'm like, I should try something like that. Maybe there's something to that, and I never kind of found that one thing. That's interesting. I'd be willing to give that a shot.
Be great, yeah. It's I can't wait to see how people. I've had just some trusted friends and allies so far take a look at it, and they've had some really good experiences with it. And they said the same thing, like, I didn't have any lucid dreams necessarily, but some of them did. Not everyone did, but they were like, but just having the coin in my pocket, I kind of felt more self-aware.
Interesting.
I could ground
cool.
myself. And I was like, yeah, all right, that's doing the trick.
So, any new books on the horizon?
Well, I don't have anything that I'm working on now. I've finally exhausted my my backlog of publishing. I worked on that 2-volume lucid dreaming anthology. It took 4 years, and it finally came out last August. And then the ebooks are done, and so I'm kind of taking some time off in terms of producing books. I think what I'm going to do is get my ebooks into print and actually get them in physical print, and that's the next project.
Cool. One more question I wanted to ask you, and I should have asked you earlier before. Float tanks. Have you ever had a float tank session?
No.
Man, for you, I think it would be right up your alley.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I lived in Berkeley, California for 5 years.
There's got to be like 50 tank centers within a mile of that place.
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking.
Where are you at now?
I'm in Philadelphia.
Philly. I know that there's one that's opening up. We actually talked with a couple of guys on the podcast. We're starting. It's Float, South New Jersey, and they're
Nice.
running through pre-sales right now, and they're going to be opening soon. They're on Twitter. You can see the construction phases and everything like that. So you might want to check that out. It's the only one in
Awesome.
South Jersey. It should be pretty close.
And so, are they just selling for homes, or are they?
No, it's a commercial business. I think they're doing 2 or 3 different tanks. It's a commercial facility that it'll run like when it's fully operational. I think it'll run 6-7 days a week and 12 hours a day. They probably do 2-hour float sessions.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, but I know they're doing pre-sales. They're having specials on it. So I think it's Float SNJ on Twitter. And I'm sure you can do a Google search for it, and it's popped up. They have a website and all that. It's ready to go. So listeners, that's Penodic Express and Cosmologica. A couple guys from the Mind Movers podcast are involved with that as well. So give them some digital love over there.
That's great. Altered States is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it really kind of gave a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth with it, but it is an experience, and if nothing else, it's the most relaxing type of place of solitude you can find in an urban center. That's for damn sure.
Believe it.
Yeah.
Believe it.
All right, well, great. Well, Ryan, thanks for being on. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, with social media, website, and all that?
Yeah, you bet. So, my dream research and consciousness blog is dreamstudies.org, and you can take a look at all of my products and books and digital kits at dreamstudies.com. And I'm on Twitter, Ryan Hurd, Hurd, and Facebook as well. So I'm easy to find.
Cool. Well, I'll have the information in the episode notes for all you guys who want to check it out. Ryan, thanks for being on the show again. Appreciate it. Appreciate you having the expertise. And like I said, I've been super interested in this subject for a long time. So it was great to finally talk with an expert outside of just reading books. It's one of the great joys of podcasting.
Nice, Jason. I had a really great time. It was a fun conversation.
All right, guys. Well, hang loose out there and sweet dreams. Well, okay, guys, there you have it. That was our discussion with Ryan Hurd. Hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. You can find his books on Amazon or directly through his website, dreamstudies.org or dreamstudies.com. Both of those will get you where you need to be. If you'd like, you can use our support link on the Intellectual Gentlemen's Club website. If you go through that portal, we get a little cut, and obviously so does he. So some of the books he's written are Sleep Paralysis, A Guide to Hypnagogic Visions and Visitors of the Night, Lucid, an Immersion Guidebook, and of course we were talking largely about Dream Like a Boss. Book 1 is Sleep Better, Dream More, and Wake Up to What Matters Most. And the second volume of that is what I've been reading, Big Dreams, Psi, Lucid Dreaming, and Borderlands of Consciousness. It's a great book. I've really been enjoying it. I'm going to continue to read through that. So definitely check out his stuff, dreamstudies.org. I think it's his primary spot. You can follow him on Facebook and Twitter as well. I want to thank you guys for listening one more time. If you guys are going to try and do some dream work and work on some lucid dreaming, make sure you check out his stuff. There's a lot of great free information on his website as well, so I encourage you to just go take a peek. And for us, you can find us on our main hub, www.intellectualgentlemensclub.com. All the podcasts are available on there. Everybody who's been on the podcast, we have a little bio and where you can get a hold of people. Some of the old blogs are on there as well. Directly through the website, it'll take you to our Twitter at IGCcast or our Facebook page at Intellectual Gentlemen's Club. Our YouTube channel is available through that page. That's the central hub. Subscribing on iTunes and Stitcher, of course, always helps us out. There's links directly to there as well. I already blasted you guys about the support page enough, so I'll leave that one alone. And just want to say thanks to Blackmill for allowing us to use that music as well. The track we're going out is Lucid Truth. The rest of the music that you've heard through the podcast is done by Secrets. Until next time, guys. See ya.
I never said I was a gentleman,
actually-
motherfuckers.